Hello, book lovers, and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Harris, and today I'm talking to author Bob Seay. Bob is the author of The Band Room, which is based on some of his experiences as a classroom teacher, and Dad, which is more personal and the book we will be talking about today. While Dad is fiction, the story draws heavily from his family's experiences as their parents got older. Bob is quoted as saying, in both books, I'm interested in family dynamics, our compassion towards others, and the idea that everyone is just doing the best they can. I like that. Hi, Bob. First of all, welcome, and thank you for coming to talk to me on Book Talk Radio Club.
Well, thank you very much for having me on.
My pleasure. Whilst that is fiction, the story draws heavily on your family's experiences as your parents get older. Or got older, sorry, I beg your pardon. Why did you decide to write the book as fiction rather than a memoir?
Mainly it was so I could have plausible deniability in case someone accused me of putting them in a book. There are characters in the book that are very similar to the people who inspired them.
Right.
And most of the characters in the book are members of my family.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to be able to say, look, it's fiction, it's just a story, in case someone got upset about that. So I changed the names and some of the details of most of the characters. The only character that I did not change a lot is the dad character. That character is pretty much exactly the way my father was.
The book blurb starts off with, can an underachieving son reconnect with his father before it's too late? Jacob's life is already complicated enough. Bob, tell us about Jacob. What kind of man is he?
That's kind of a hard question to answer because basically Jacob is me. And I have to admit, I thought about who is Jacob. That story is based on three different periods in my life. When I was going through my divorce, when I lost a job and had to find some way to make some income, and the decline of my parents as they got older. And thankfully, in real life, those all happened at three separate times. For the book, I layered them together as if they were all happening at the same time. It just seemed to make a better story.
Right.
Jacob is a pragmatist. He does what has to be done, even when he's not quite sure if it's the right thing to do. He's also smart. I mean, the guy writes college research papers for a living. And I gave him that job because it allowed me to insert little rabbit trails around the book that you wouldn't ordinarily find in a novel. Like there's a whole bit in there about the Waffle House Index, which how on earth would you integrate that into a novel unless you had a character? You can't just randomly throw that out.
Sure.
And so by making Jacob a guy who runs his own business selling term papers on the internet, I was able to give him, I could write anything, literally,
Sure.
because I could rationalize it by saying that he had written this for an assignment.
So why is he an underachiever? Is that in his view or in his dad's view?
I think that it's both of their views. I think his father clearly, his father lists off the things that Jacob has not accomplished. At one point in the book, his dad just kind of goes through this laundry list of things that Jacob has started to do but not completed. But I think that also Jacob sees himself as an underachiever. His goals and his dreams kind of got pushed back while he was busy making a living and having a life. He's doing okay. He's making enough money to make a living. He's just trying to keep everything together, basically.
The book blurb then goes on to read, now Dad, whose mind isn't as sharp as it once was, is driving out for a visit, or he was, before he got lost along the way. Now it's up to Jacob to find him and reconnect. Without giving away too much of the story, does Jacob actually reconnect with his dad?
That's a great question, and I think I want to leave that for the readers to decide.
Fair enough.
I will say this. I am really proud of the ending of this book. Jacob manages to tie everything together. Actually, his brother does. His brother manages to tie everything together quite nicely, I think. And so that works. And it's more connections than just Jacob with his dad. There's a multitude of connections across this. It's about a family. I think that Jacob's relationship with his dad certainly changes through the course of the book, and he begins to see his father as a person rather than as this idealized father character.
Doesn't that happen to all of us when we grow up, or as we grow up?
You would hope so. You would hope that it would. But in some cases, I don't know. I mean, my relationship with my dad was complicated, and we resolved it towards the end. which was good. But I think that parent relationships with their adult children, and vice versa, the adult children's relationship with their parent
Mm.
is that's a complex thing.
It is. So is Jacob's dad suffering from dementia?
I don't know that he would say he suffers from it, but he certainly has it. He's in the
Good
mid
point.
stages of Alzheimer's.
Mm.
The book opens with Jacob's. This is not going to be a spoiler for anyone. The book opens with Jacob getting a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning from his brother,
Mm-hmm.
telling him that his dad has left Cincinnati and they found him in Kansas City.
Mm.
And he's lost. He's been driving around for 10 hours in Kansas City. That actually happened in real life.
Oh,
I actually got that phone call
how
and
worrying.
had to go get my dad.
Oh.
I live in Colorado, and I don't know if people in the UK can really appreciate the geographic distances that exist in the United States.
Believe me, I know. I used to travel out there 5 or 6 times a year and travel all over the place. So yes, I do personally.
Yeah, well, it's a big place,
It
you know.
is. It is.
And so I got in my car at 2 o'clock in the morning to go get my dad that day,
Mm.
and I drove for 10 hours before I got to him.
Oh my God.
And so, that's kind of a side note, but Jacob's dad is healthy enough that he can drive even if he gets lost.
Mm.
He's beginning to have a hard time caring for himself. He's forgetful. But his biggest problem, and the most interesting thing about him, is the way he takes factual things from his life, events that actually happened, and they became these huge fantasies. You
Mm.
know, um, he really believes it's kind of a Walter Mitty story on
Yeah.
some level.
Sure.
He believes that he has actually done these things, and he talks about them a lot.
I love the dedication to all families with aging parents. There's something so deeply emotional when it comes to aging parents for an adult child, isn't there? There's such a role reversal. All the years they looked after us, now we're looking after them like they're the children. It seems that it's doubly hard again when there's some sort of dementia involved too. More like looking after a baby. And would you agree with that, Bob?
Um, about the dedication, I wanted a dedication that was as universal as possible.
Mm.
And all of us have parents, even if we're not, especially close to them, and
Yeah.
none of us are getting any younger. But you're right. There is a special dynamic that happens when adult children become the caregivers for their parents.
Mm.
In the book Dad, Jacob's brother and his wife have that primary responsibility. They've been the ones who have been looking after Dad
Mm.
until Dad decides to go on this road trip, and Jacob has to rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that looking after Dad was like looking after a baby. It was more like looking after a precocious 6-year-old with a really vivid imagination.
Let's talk a little bit about you now, Bob C. So you live in Colorado with your wife Ginger and 2 Labrador retrievers. And we're not writing, you're a high school band director, a choir director, and a guitar teacher. In 2016, you ran for Congress. However, you say 2 out of 3 voters felt that you should keep on writing and being a teacher. I love that. What made you decide to want to enter politics?
I should start this by saying I live in an extremely conservative part of Colorado.
Okay.
Colorado is much like the rest of the United States. The urban parts of the state lean Democratic or progressive or whatever word you care to use for that.
Mm-hmm.
And the rural parts of the state tend to lean conservative or to the right.
Mm.
In some cases, the extreme right. And I was running in 2016, and everybody knows how that election ultimately went.
Yes.
Not just for me, but for the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
And those problems of separation certainly did not improve under the previous administration.
No, they didn't.
No, not at all. I just have this crazy belief that healthcare should be a right and not a privilege.
Absolutely.
And that people deserve a living wage, and that all people, regardless of what they look like or believe, deserve to be treated with respect.
Amen to that. Absolutely.
And those issues come up in both of my books. I didn't want to make the books too preachy because nobody wants to read that. But you can tell where Jacob, and in the band room, the main character, or the lead character in the band room, the elite adult in the band room is Paul Roberts. Both those characters present ideas that are in line with my political views.
Was there a particular book or author that inspired you to start writing?
First book that made me want to be a writer was uh, John Toole's Confederacy of Dunces. That was the first book I read that made me really want to be a writer. Um, I also I like John Irving a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I like Tom Robbins. I also read a lot of columnists and a lot of bloggers.
Mm.
I like people that are good with words and that can create intelligent, thought-provoking writing.
You say, I write because it's more sociably acceptable than screaming. I totally get that, but at times there's nothing more satisfying than screaming into a pillow and punching it, or maybe that's just me, I don't know. Aside from writing your 2 books, what else do you write?
I write a lot of political stuff on my blog, bobseay.com, and my name is the worst name on earth for these things. The last name is spelled S-E-A-Y,
Mm.
so the domain is B-O-B-S-E-A-Y. Anyway, there's an archive there, blog posts that I wrote and have written. I kind of scaled back on that because honestly, I didn't want my blog to interfere with book sales from people, although I'm beginning to realize that doesn't really matter. I write a lot of editorials for various progressive causes. In some cases, other people will put their names on that. Like, it's better to have a local name on a local issue article than it is to have my name on it because people don't know who I am. I do a lot of writing like that.
Back to Dad and the reviews. You've received some really wonderful reviews, including, as soon as I started reading Dad, it was not easy to put down. Dad brings a person on a journey per se of thinking about one's own relationship with their parent or anyone else in their family, or rather it did for myself. It's a beautiful read. Also, for starters, Bob Seay can write, I mean really write, by choosing to tell the tale in first person present narrative. Seay crafts a story that moves at a good pace and touches all the emotional bases, especially at the ending, when any thinking reader should be deeply moved. Well done. Great reviews. So where can Book Talk Radio Club listeners purchase, Dad?
They can get it on Amazon is probably the easiest way. Unfortunately, there are a lot of books named Dad. So to get to my book from Amazon, you almost need to type in Dad and then my name, Bob Seay, and then it will come up. It's also available for order through Ingram Spark, and so if they go into any bookstore that orders their books from Ingram Spark, they can get it there. They can request it and get it from the bookstores there as well.
All right. Well, thank you, Bob. That was great. And thank you so much for talking to us about your book. And thank you, everyone, for listening to Book Talk Radio Club. Lovely to speak to you. Bye now.